Thanks for sitting down for an interview. First question, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is TJ VanToll. I work for a company called Telerik, and I work remotely in Lansing, Michigan as a developer advocate.
So what's your talk about tomorrow?
I am talking about Cordova plugins, or Cordova plugins in action. So we at Telerik, we make a lot of Cordova tooling, and a lot of that tooling is based upon Cordova plugins. And we run what's called the Telerik Verified Plugins Marketplace, where we host a bunch of Cordova plugins, and all of them that we make available free and open source for the Cordova community. So basically my talk is I want to expose a lot of the plugins that we've introduced into our marketplace in like the last year or so. We've added a couple of bigger features for just things like, if you think like iOS, like Touch ID, and we have an Apple Watch plugin, some other like newer technology that we've added for plugins that we just want to tell the Cordova world about.
In terms of plugins, it's an interesting space. So it's actually that sounds great because sometimes plugins are created, but they're maybe not up to date or maintained. How do you sort of feel that the Cordova plugin market's evolved in the last couple of years?
Yeah, one of the reasons we created this marketplace is when we first got into the Cordova space, we saw that there was a lot of demand for plugins. There were a lot of people that wanted the hybrid development approach, but still wanted to bring in these pieces of native to incorporate them into their app. And as you said, like the plugins, they're not necessarily easy to build or maintain. If you look at, if you're building for multiple platforms, those platforms evolve. New iOS versions come out all the time. New Android versions come out all the time. So we saw that it was challenging for the community to keep up with that. If you are just an individual developer, you may not have the resources to take that upon yourself. It's a lot of work. So with our marketplace, we wanted to step in and just offer basically our hand and our expertise to help curate these plugins, to sort of notify or sort of recognize the ones that have been maintained. And some of the plugins are ones that are community plugins that we just sort of list in our marketplace as a way of telling our community these are things that we've verified that work. Some of them are ones that we've written. Some of them are ones that we've contracted out to be written as well, just based off user demand.
So with that, it sounds like this is a repository or a catalog of plugins that are applicable to anybody doing Cordova development, not specific to Telerik?
Yep. So we have the plugins, and they're all free. They're all open source and available to use. Now, the reason we sort of provide this, because we do have a strategy that we want people to sort of get into our tooling. So if you go to the Cordova marketplace, if you open each individual page, you'll see that you can just download the plugin. So if you just want to get the code and you want to incorporate it into your sort of mechanism, the Cordova CLI, or however you want to do it, that's fine. But we also give you an easy way to load it into our tooling. We have what's known as Telerik App Builder and the Telerik Platform, which is a series of tools for helping you build Cordova apps. So from the plugin perspective, Telerik App Builder will help you load plugins into your apps. We'll help you test those plugins. So we have companion apps for iOS and Android. We have build tools that'll help build in those plugins into your applications. And then when you go broader into the Telerik Platform, we have tooling like places to store your data, help you with user management, push notifications, analytics, the whole 9 yards, basically the whole package.
Telerik has a lot of Cordova software, but there's also NativeScript. How does that work together, or how will that possibly work together in the future, or will they work together?
Yep. Yeah, and this is a great question. So as part of the Telerik platform, we support development with both Cordova and NativeScript. And what's cool is that regardless of the approach you're using, both are JavaScript based. So you're mostly writing JavaScript code with both, and you're building native apps with both. So from our perspective, it's kind of convenient because a lot of our tooling just works either way, regardless of the approach you use. Well, we see NativeScript, and for people that aren't familiar with NativeScript, it's basically our JavaScript framework for building truly native apps. And what we mean by that is native user interfaces. So instead of Cordova, where you're taking a web view, basically like a small instance of a web page, and loading it, we're instead with NativeScript building a completely native UI. So from actually dealing with the phone on your device, it's indistinguishable from just sort of a truly natively written application. And to answer your question, you asked like sort of how they play together. What we see is that NativeScript is basically a more powerful option in terms of what you're capable of building, since you get the power of being able to go truly native iOS and Android, but you give up some of the conveniences that Cordova offers. For instance, in NativeScript, you write your UI using an XML syntax that we provide, because we don't use HTML because we are not using a browser. We are not using a DOM. So for developers, especially web developers, there's a little higher barrier to entry and learning curve than Cordova because there's this additional abstraction in place.
All right. In the last year, what have you found most exciting in the mobile or JavaScript world?
So to me, it's technologies like NativeScript, like React Native, some of these things that we really don't even have a good term to refer to them. Like we've sort of toyed with the idea of calling them JavaScript native frameworks or hybrid native. Like there's no good phrase necessarily that we have. But what we see is that there's an increasing move for people to sort of mix the best of web and native. We see that people from the web want the development experience that the web offers. So people like authoring in JavaScript. They like styling their apps in CSS. They like quickly being able to develop and deploy their code. The web has a really nice refresh cycle for development when you don't have to go through the full build. But at the same time, people like characteristics from native. They like the performance of a native app. They like the look of a native app. They want their iOS app to look like an iOS app, feel like an iOS app, and perform like one. And same thing on Android. On Android, they want the material design characteristics. They want all the nuances or the intricacies of their Android app to work. And I think with NativeScript and React Native, and even with the work we're doing with Cordova plugins, I think they're all sort of efforts to give developers like a best of both worlds experience, where you get to use the sort of best of the web in terms of coding and authoring, but that you're able to then pull in your native, the best that native has to offer, without going fully native, without having to like learn Xcode and Swift and Objective-C and then Android Studio and Java. Because going truly native, you get the best sort of finished product on these native platforms, but the learning curve and the development effort is significantly higher too.
Great answers. What about the next year? Do you see anything in particular that has you excited about mobile or JavaScript in 2016?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing to me is sort of the MVC framework wars and the whole Backbone, Ember, React. We could go on and name 50 of these things. So we have Angular 2, which has been in beta has been in alpha for some time and is now in beta and is soon to come out. And what's interesting to me is just to see how that takes off and how the development community takes to that, and sort of that versus how the React community matures, and then some of these other frameworks that are available as well. And I think it's also interesting now because we see JavaScript playing a bigger role in software development in general. Whereas before you'd use Angular, React to build your web app, and then you'd go build your mobile app in something different, and maybe you'd build a desktop in something else. Because JavaScript is now becoming really all-encompassing, you can build your web app with these technologies, but then you can use Cordova, you can use NativeScript, you can use React Native to build your mobile app that way. And then you have projects like Electron that will let you write even desktop apps using those technologies. Like it almost raises the stakes of sort of these JavaScript tooling choices, both frameworks, also things like TypeScript and all of these things that provide tooling to help you build apps. And we're seeing that space grow enormously.
So JavaScript's taken over the world.
Yes.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you very much.
Yep.